It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome. This is the Jill on Money show. It is the Independence Day episode. Yep, here we go. Long weekend, amid a pandemic, lots of things going on. Want to make sure that you have all the information you need to navigate these very strange times in the economy and in your personal life. Want to remind you that we are broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, what's in your wallet? It was a crazy week this past week, holiday shortened because markets were, of course, closed on Friday. But it was a heck of a quarter for stocks. And if you want to read more about that, you can just hop on to the website, jillonmoney.com, because that's where I write about what's going on. And I'm going to be really focusing over the next few weeks about actions you need to be taking in the second half of this year. So, yes, I would like to review. It has been one crazy first half of the year. Imagine that we started this year out, which I can't even believe, thinking that the economy was going to grow by 2% this year. And we thought that was lousy. Let's be honest. It really did feel like it was going to be lousy. And yet, here we have in the first half of the year, the economy contracting by 5% in the first quarter. We won't know the numbers for the second quarter for a couple weeks, but fair to say that probably the economy shrunk by about 20% on an annualized basis, at least in the second quarter. Looks like by the end of the year, most of the forecasts are showing that the U.S. economy will be smaller by somewhere between, 5, 6, 7, 8%. And that's assuming a pretty decent recovery for the end of the year. So what are you going to do to get through this crazy time? You are going to send us emails because that's how we can help you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. askjill@jillonmoney.com. Emily writes, I love the show. And she's listening to our podcast. We have a sister broadcast. It's a podcast and it's daily. And we've been hearing a lot, by the way, from folks who are walking and riding with us on their daily walks. And that's what Emily's doing. If you want to get our podcast, just subscribe to it. Okay, I'll do that later. Anyway, Emily's says, love the podcast, getting to start my morning walks with you. I was gifted your book, Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money by my mother-in-law. And I immediately sent 2 copies to my own friends. The way you break down complex information simply puts my mind at ease during these stressful times. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you, Emily. So she continues. I'm 34 years old. My husband and I are both teachers at a public university. Due to COVID's effect on university enrollment and state education budget cuts, we will be making less money than we normally do this coming academic year, meaning the fall semester, right? Fall 2020 through summer 2021. Emily says, I am anticipating a 15 to 20% loss in annual household income. Eesh. Okay. I also work part-time to supplement our income, but that revenue stream is uncertain given the pandemic. We're expecting to have to use some of our emergency savings this fall to welcome our second child due in October, in addition to covering expenses not met by the shortfall from the teaching salary. Okay, here we go. Given this uncertainty, I'm taking a critical look at our expenses and savings, wondering if I should use the CARES Act relief for retirement accounts to pay down our highest interest credit card debt. Now, for everyone listening, remember that the CARES Act means that there is no 10% early distribution penalty from retirement accounts. That's huge if you're under the age of 59 and a half. So here's what Emily's situation is. They got $15,000 of high interest credit card debt, no student loans, $20,000 in emergency reserves, $51,000 in a Fidelity 401k, $89,000 in a 403b. Even though it goes against my instinct to never touch my 401k, my thinking is if I used an early withdrawal to pay down the credit card debt, I could divert the monthly payment I was making to the credit card debt to replenish the 401k and pay the taxes on that sum over the next 3 years. Is this a totally dumb idea? Thank you again for all that you and Mark do to keep your listeners informed and inspired. Emily. P.S. Here's a photo of my walking companion, a 5-year-old Australian cattle dog who has a gorgeous face. Maybe we can post that, Mark. I don't know. Okay, so let's think about this. Uh, it is really tantalizing to do this. Here's what I think I would do. Okay. I don't know what your monthly payment is. I guess for the credit card. I guess this has a possibility of working. I'm just really nervous about taking that money out of the retirement account now. Mark, I don't know. I'm really torn on this one. I definitely don't want you to use your emergency reserves. All right, this is what I think. I just asked Mark. We went through it back and forth. We both were like initially no, then I went to maybe yes, and now here's what I think. I don't think you should take the money out. I tell you what I think you should do. Why don't you pull back on your contribution a little bit to the retirement account and push more money towards the pay down of the high interest credit card debt? 15 grand, you should be able to get there in, I think in a decent amount of time. I'm just worried because why take the money out of that retirement account? Then you do have to pay the money back. And I know it's only over 3 years, but gosh, I just feel like that money's never going to get back in the account. So I say, no, don't do it. It's not a totally crazy idea, obviously, because I went back and forth and so did Mark. So I think let's avoid that. And gosh, in many respects, the idea of doing this is not a bad thing. I mean, I like the idea that people are considering alternatives to what their normal procedures might be, especially amid the pandemic. But what I do think is that when possible, we want to avoid tapping these retirement accounts. The coronavirus retirement distributions are certainly available, but I feel like that should be the break the glass scenario. I just don't feel like you're there yet. And yeah, I get why you would consider it. I just think in your situation, specifically for you, so everyone listening is going to be different, but for your situation, I do think that just concentrating on the debt pay down, preserving that cash, doing the best you can during this time, especially while the kiddo comes along in the fall, I think it's better off not to touch that retirement. Okay. So I hope that helps. And thank you very much for writing. Really do appreciate it. And your dog is adorable. All right. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email. It's askjill@jillonmoney.com. And again, if you want to download our podcast, you can do so on Apple, on Spotify, Stitcher, radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else you might find your favorite podcast. If you don't know how to find a podcast, get one of your friends or relatives who's a podcast listener to show you. There's a great goal during your pandemic lockdown phase. If you're re-lockdown, learn how to download podcasts. The first one you pick, Jill on Money. Okay, we'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you have a financial question, a money question, give us a holler. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Hey, Mark, I was, preparing for my big housing segment on CBS this morning, this past week. You can go check that out at our website, jillonmoney.com, under the TV tab or under the watch tab, rather. And you know what I found was so interesting? And that is when we get a ton of questions about housing here. But we have a recent analysis by the American Enterprise Institute, which shows that the pandemic is driving more Americans to the suburbs. Now, this could be temporary. I don't know if this is a long term trend or not, but over the last month or so, home purchases, which they measured by interest rate mortgage application locks. Okay, but so it's a little fuzzy. It's not perfect, but anyway, um, home purchases in non-urban areas have increased by a third more than in urban areas compared to the same period last year. Now, the other thing that is amazing, 32 million American adults were living with their parents or grandparents, according to the Census Bureau. That's up by almost 10% from a year ago. So maybe people need to head out of town and get into a suburban house because they got a bigger family that they have to worry about. I don't know, but we're going to keep an eye on this. Are you looking for a house? Do you need some help? Then just give us a holler. Again, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That is our email address. Lisa writes, I'm a longtime listener and a recent reader of Jill's book. I love the podcast. You've inspired me to up my financial game and knowledge as we prepare for retirement. Before I get to my question, here are our stats. Married 32 years. I'm 58. My husband is 55. She writes in parentheses, cradle robber. Okay. Our son, who will be entering his senior year in college in the fall, works during the summer full-time and part-time during the school year. We both currently work full-time. I make about $160,000. My husband makes about $80,000. Okay, 401ks, they've got, let's see, she's got about 1.2 million in her 401k. Hubby has 700,000. Roth IRAs combined another 100,000. A matured annuity at 78,000, 40 grand in cash, home loan 80,000, the house value 780,000. Okay. So, they both contribute to their 401ks. She contributes about 18%, her husband 10%. They save another $1,500 a month in the general savings account. They are cash flowing their son's college with about $60,000 remaining to pay over the course of the next year. Typically, we don't carry any other debt besides the home loan. I love my job. It's high pressure. I also love my company. I'm hopeful that I can transition to a job with less responsibility and maybe part-time after our son graduates and is on his own. My husband doesn't care for his job. He can't get out fast enough. We've got term life insurance and a trust. Okay, here's the root of my question. I set up a personal capital account to track all of our spending and assets. I want to get a good handle on what we need in retirement to live comfortably. So I'm tracking and categorizing all the transactions for a year. Personal Capital contacted me for financial consultation. I looked through their website, the fiduciary statement, decided to go for the meeting. To date, we've been managing our own money without much professional advice. As we approach retirement, I've got lots of questions about balancing our investments, tax sheltering, withdrawal strategies, the usual, oh my God, we're getting close to retirement. What do we do questions? Not surprisingly, the CFP had suggestions for changing our accounts and our allocations. They have a model that they use called Smartwatch. It invests in the 10 major sectors using primarily individual stocks, 10% in each sector. Then they rebalance. Okay, I was worried about the individual stocks, but the more information they shared, including their 30-year history, I can see the benefits. It seems a little complex. Granted, they would manage it with us, but it's not a strategy I would attempt to do on my own. The fee, here we go. And by the way, she says the only thing they would move is their Roths and the annuity, right? So their fee is 0.89%. It would reduce if we moved over our 401ks after retirement. So we want to create and validate a retirement plan. I love the idea of having someone continue helping us with our financial education. I'd love your thoughts on Personal Capital and their platform. Our tentative plan is to retire from our careers in the next 12 to 24 months, work part-time till 65, then fully retire. We could live comfortably on $5,000 a month if the house were paid off, $7,000 if not. So there you go. If you have any additional questions, let me know. Lisa. Okay, Lisa, I'm taking a breath here. First of all, Personal Capital is very similar to other robo advisors in that they have access to these human advisors. And yeah, that management fee is probably pretty high, actually. They do have an account minimum of 100 grand. The fees that they charge are higher than what I think are the other robos out there. They do have this idea about individual securities. They do give you a dedicated financial advisor. Some other firms will only give you an advisor, du jour, meaning you don't get the same one. That said, I don't love the whole I mean, individual securities, if you own them already, maybe if you had a taxable account, or I don't know. I've always had a problem with personal capital compared to the alternatives because it's so much more expensive. When you think about it, if you think what other places you could go, and you think, well, I could go to Betterment, or I could go to Vanguard, or I could go to Schwab and get the same kind of help. I think you might have better alternatives. And by the way, I'm not even sure you need someone to actually manage your money, because if you were to simply go to a fee only advisor and have that advisor develop a retirement plan for you, that may be all you really do need. So I'm going to say this. I think you should start looking at a few other options. I think that it's worth your while to talk to both Vanguard, which again, Vanguard Personal Service Advisor has a lower minimum, it will have a lower fee. I think you should look at Betterment, and I think you should look at Schwab Intelligent Portfolio. I think those three are your alternatives, and they are cheaper. And I just don't buy into the whole individual stock thing as a premise. It doesn't seem smart to me. Then, considering you do have 12 to 24 months, maybe the other idea is to go to a fee only planner who will develop an actual plan for you, and then you execute it, because you guys are in really good shape. And I'm not entirely certain you need someone to actually manage your money for you. You might need a retirement plan, and that might be worth something to you. And I think it would be worth something to you, but perhaps it might be more efficient for you to pay someone to create that plan, and then you can implement it. Now, if you want to go look for a fee only advisor, the best place to do that is NAPFA, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, napfa.org. And there you can find someone who will charge you by the hour for a plan. And if you run into a problem, or you need someone to hold your hand, or maybe you get another advisor, or you get something else out there that's causing you to reconsider, why don't you give us just give us a shout, follow up with us, because we sure would be delighted to help you out. Okay. I hope that helps you. I know a lot of people who are listening might think, this is such a great situation. Why would you need help? Because sometimes we just need someone to hold our hands through the process of retirement. You've never retired before, so I understand that. So let's make sure that anyone who's seeking financial assistance gets that assistance. Those are really your go-to places, and maybe at the end of the day, you're willing to pay up for personal because you like the idea that you've got this dedicated person, or you buy into their plan. But I think we should at least suss out what your alternatives are. Okay, I hope that helps. Thank you so much for writing. Hey, if you, like the past couple of emailers, want to get my book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, you can just go to the website, jillonmoney.com. There you could buy it for everyone you know. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Okay, we'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And if you have a question, it could be a real estate question, a tax question, it could be an investment question, maybe it's a career question. Give us a holler. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That's what George did. And he writes, "Hello, Jill. First of all, I want to thank you for the great information you provide on your daily podcast. It helps us in these difficult times. I learn from each one of your responses." Hey, you know what? Thanks, George. I was just complaining to Mark, the producer, that I was getting so bored of listening to my own voice. And Mark said, "Well, people like your voice. They want you to talk more." Now, here you are saying that, and it makes me feel bad for saying that previously. But anyway, George goes on, "Let me tell you a little bit about us so you can give a more precise answer to our question. We are a retired couple in our mid 70s with fair health. We have two kids. We live in our own home. We've got a portfolio of about $1.25 million. It has a target allocation of 65% bonds, 35% stocks, and 5% cash. But they're a little out of whack right now. 60% of our portfolio in IRAs, 28% in Roth IRAs. We withdraw $2,800 a month. Right now, things are fine. I am looking, though, more into the future, mainly thinking, how long will we be able to stay at home? And the fact that our kids may need some help due to COVID, which has affected their jobs. FYI, one of them runs food and beverage in one of the large arenas in Florida. Ay, ay, ay. Part of our portfolio is managed by Vanguard. At one point, I was interested in investing in their annuity with GLWB. Our advisor thought it was not a good idea due to the high costs, although I understand Vanguard is one of the best when it comes to lower cost annuities. I'd like to know your opinion on this. Do you think it's a good idea to move some money into an annuity to have guaranteed income? I tend to think that you're okay where you are. The withdrawal amounts are not crazy. It seems okay. I'm a little worried about an annuity, mostly because interest rates are really low. And I wonder, why you'd give up the security of having that cash available versus the guaranteed income. I don't think you should do this. In terms of the larger picture, I don't know if you guys have really enough money to be helping out your kids right now. You're in good shape today. I think that maybe what you would consider is this. Whatever, I don't know if each of your kids is in a similar situation because one seems like probably more at risk than the other. But, if you were to maybe gift some money or lend some money, I would be careful just to make some sort of accommodation maybe in your estate documents. The other issue is that, if you live in your house and that's something you want to continue to do, that's great. Maybe something that you would think about if you really needed some cash is a reverse mortgage. They are getting a lot better. Not a perfect product, but it better. And I think that until I had a sense that you really could get like the deal of the century with an annuity, which I just don't think is going to be the case right now. The cost is such that it does not make sense. And also the loss of the access to your money does not make sense. So I'm going to say it's a no, George. I would not do it because it's just too much. I can't emphasize enough, gang, how hard it is to actually get money available and have that liquidity. That's incredibly, incredibly important. So hopefully that helps you. Okay. This is a question from Evan, who says he thinks he picked a bad time to roll over $85,000 from a SEP into a rollover IRA in his company's 401k. He's got $85,000 in the Fidelity money market. I know you cannot time the market, but given the recent volatility, I thought I would wait a couple of months and see what happens. So in other words, you do want to time the market. So let me just put that in everyone's heads. I know you can't time the market. That's what Evan writes. But given the volatility, I thought I would wait a couple of months and see what happens. That's market timing, guys. So if you're a long-term investor, which you say you are, is it better to put in my index fund allocations or would you keep it in cash for the time being? It's the bulk of my 401k. My wife's 401k is worth about 230 grand if it makes a difference. Doesn't make a difference to me. Here's the deal, Evan. You cannot do this. If you are really worried about the market and timing the market and worried if the market's going to go down, then at least then dollar cost average. Don't make this a black and white decision. It doesn't have to be all of it at once or none of it. What you want to do is set a game plan and stick to that game plan. So here we are. It is the beginning of July. Maybe you make a decision and you say, okay, second half of the year, I am going to move some of this money in every single month. I personally, if I had a 25-year time horizon, I would just essentially put it all in at once. But that said, it makes people nuts to do that. So at least pick some period of time by which you will get this money invested. Because I'm sure that what you're really fearful of is that the day you invest, the market will drop by 30%. Hey, it might. But if I look forward 25 years and I say to you, even if you invested at the absolute worst time, you still would have been better off. You'll look back on this and like it'll be a blip. It really will be. You are trying to time the market. There's no doubt about it from what you're writing. You know that you're trying to time the market, which is why you sent us an email. We want to prevent you from timing the market. So if you would just at least consider dollar cost averaging, that to me is a much smarter way of going about it. Okay, great. All right, gang, we're going to go out to a break. While we do, why don't you go to the website, jillonmoney.com, sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Mark pops that into your mailbox every single Friday, and it is fantastic, chock full of information. So jillonmoney.com, sign up for the free weekly newsletter. And while you're there, why don't you check out the resource section? There's all sorts of stuff there with the CARES Act and all the different aspects of that, but other things as well. And if you've got a resource, a financial resource that you have stumbled upon and you think we should add it to our resource section, let us know. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com or just click the contact button. It's in the upper right-hand corner of the Jill on Money website. Okay, we'll be right back with more of your questions.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and this is the program that attempts to take the mystery out of your financial life. If you have a question, two ways to get in touch with us. Send us an email, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And if you're on our website, on the jillonmoney.com website, there is a contact button. It's in the upper right-hand corner. Easy to do, right? Hey, Mark, whatever happened to our 800 number? Did we disconnect that, or is that even still I have no idea. I just remembered that we had that. Oh my gosh. Mark says he thinks it exists, but we don't remember the login. We should probably cancel that all out. Anyway, let's get to our next question from Sean, whose subject reads, question from London. Dear Jill and Mark, greetings from your old haunt, London. I'm an American living over here with about 500,000 more others. So don't forget about your fans overseas who listen to the daily podcast. Oh, well, thank you. I love that. We have been getting some overseas questions lately, so we very much appreciate that. And Mark and I always have a special place in our hearts for London, where we both spent some time, a considerable amount of time over the past 5 years or so. Is that 5 years? Yeah, that's right. Okay. Sean goes on to write, I also recently bought your book from an online retailer. And by the way, Sean says it was cheaper in the UK than in the US. Says a great quick read. I picked up several helpful pointers. Thank you. Okay, so by way of background, I'm in my late 40s, married to a Brit, residing on this side of the pond with kids. And they have posh English accents. Oh my God, I'd love that. Mark, you got to move to London so the boy can get that accent. Okay. As with all U.S. citizens anywhere in the world, we have to pay taxes back home on our global income. So U.S. financial planning is a consideration regarding all of our investments. My individual 401k is worth over 1.5 million bucks, and my financial planner in the States informs me that I must complete Form 5500 SF from the Labor Department each year as the balance is over 250 grand. I don't recall this requirement mentioned on your many podcasts, and nothing comes up on your website when using the search function for this matter. Can you discuss this requirement and any guidance and thoughts? Okay, I will in a second. Let's finish this out. So question number 2, I have UTMA accounts for my children and I max out $15,000 annually. So everybody who is in the US, you can gift $15,000 to anybody you want, including your kids, right? Okay, without any tax ramifications. So the question is, what suggestions would you have on investments to hold in these accounts? They offer an excellent teaching tool about investing in markets. Our time horizon per account is between 18 and 15 years, maybe two-thirds of the total split along 60-40 stock bond mutual funds, the other third to play with a few individual stocks that I can teach them and maybe analyze and choose. Yeah, you know what? I mean, I think that's great. I think that it's really important for people to understand that, when you open accounts for kids, you've got to decide what exactly do you want to happen with this money. And I think that in most cases, people want to use these accounts to accumulate money for schools or whatever, but it is a teaching opportunity. So I think that's a great idea, and get them involved. That's perfect. And just, as long as you can do this in an efficient way, that seems good to me. Okay. Now, let's get to this Form 5500 SF. The reason why I have not discussed this is that I guess I don't know whether we've ever gotten a question about this. I am familiar with Form 5500. I'm not so, I mean, and this is just a requirement, I guess. And so I never ever have had to actually give this advice. I know about the 5500. I didn't know what the SF was. Short form annual return report of small employee benefit plan. That's why I guess so it's two things. Number one is the normal 5500. It's kind of for anybody. And the SF is for a smaller form. It says it must be completed and filed electronically. And I don't know if there's much more to say about it, which is just that you got to say, here's where the money is, presumably because the government wants to know where that money is, and would of course like to get its little greedy hands on that money eventually, because you'll have to then take the money out. But it's a declaration kind of, and I guess that the one thing that's interesting about it from my perspective is you look forward and you plan to live your life overseas, just what the tax ramification is down the line, and making sure that you weave that into your overall game plan. Because obviously, you do get hosed a little bit living overseas. It's why some people who do live overseas actually consider rescinding their US citizenship. I always feel like that's a weird thing. It's really hard to get US citizenship, so I wouldn't do that. But anyway, that's it. I never got the question before. So thank you for sending it to us. And we are delighted that you are an overseas fan. And if I need to answer any more questions on your behalf, Sean, let me know. And most importantly, tally ho, cheerio, and of course, thanks for writing. Mark wants you to have a pint for us. Although, I'm such a wimp. It's very hard for me to drink those pints. They're very large. A pint is more than you think. Okay. It's Jill on Money. Before we get to the end of the hour, we will have time for another question or two. If you would like to get in touch with us, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com is our email address, and we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, what's in your wallet? Mark and I may never go back into a studio again. Mark, I find it hard to even imagine going back into a studio. What about you? Yeah, the problem is that neither of us really wants to have have him get on a subway, so that's not happening. Okay. Now, that said, if you have a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Okay, here is a message from S. I don't know the name, but we'll call it S. Hi, Jill. I just wanted to share my thoughts on reading your recent book. So many hard truths. We purchased a house back in the city, and my husband is suffering from depression and addiction from buyer's remorse. Oh, gosh. So many arguments. The reason I share is that I have always tried to live by your principles, yet my husband is completely opposite, despite the fact he's an accountant. I made a lot of money over the years and handed it over for him to control, told me not to burden with it. Just wanted to thank you for reassuring me. I'm recommending the book to my children so they will not make the mistakes that I have done. Your dad gave you good advice. There is no price for freedom. Thanks for your common sense advice. That is so nice. I love that. Oh, man. Fantastic. Just fantastic. Well, thank you for that note. Boy, does that make me feel good. And I'm very happy that you like the book. And if anyone else wants to hear more about that book or buy the book, go to the website, jillonmoney.com. Now, stretch out, take a walk, because we have a huge second hour. We have retirement and IRA expert Ed Slott. He's here to talk about, taxes. They're due in just a few days, July 15th, 2020. It's Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome back. It's hour number 2 of Jill on Money. How are you? Stretch out, man. We got a really exciting hour ahead. We are broadcasting from the Policy Genius virtual studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. All you have to do is go to policygenius.com. Oh boy. I mean, you really might have cooked your own goose, because maybe you thought, oh, I don't have to worry about a thing. I'll just take the IRS on that offer, take them up on that offer to file my taxes July 15th. And here we are. It's Independence Day, the 4th of July. And you got to think about your stupid taxes. I know you now regret that decision. I regret that decision for you as well. That was really too bad. But here you are, days before tax filing deadline, July 15th, around the corner. And we're lucky enough to have an expert to hold your hand and get you through this period, okay? His name is Ed Slott, and yes, he's been on the show before, and you may have even seen him on public television. He is a retirement and IRA expert. His website is IRAHelp.com. He is the man who convinced me and Mark pretty early on that it was Roth IRA all the way. And he's just so smart and fun and easy to talk to, especially when it comes to tax filing time. Here is the first part of our interview with Ed Slott. Ed, isn't it weird for you to be talking about taxes for a July 15th deadline, right? Surreal.
I know. It's like going to summer school.
It's awful, isn't it? And I just pulled up some of the data from the IRS. And it looks like the number of returns received is down by about 5% from a year ago, and processed down 12%, although the refund is still at about almost $2,800. So if you have not filed your returns, what do you need to know right now, Ed?
Well, you're not late because they changed the due date from April 15th to July 15th. But as you said, can you imagine July 4th weekend working on your taxes? It is surreal. Like we've never seen that before. But so the actual due date is July 15th. Some people think that's an extended due date. It isn't. It's the actual due date. The extended due date still stays at October 15th. So if you can't file by July or you're just too busy at the beach or whatever, you have to file an extension just like you would have back in April. So July 15th is really the new April 15th. If you need an extension, you file it before July 15th for October 15th. But there's certain things that cannot be extended and certain things that are. For example, believe it or not, if you haven't made an IRA or Roth IRA contribution for 2019, last year, you still have until July 15th to make that contribution. So it's something to think about. At the time it would have been due, say April 15th, we were all in flux. It was still may be, but maybe you were worried about contributing money and you may have lost a job and things have happened. So hopefully if things settle down maybe and you're able to contribute for last year, you can still do it up to July 15th, but there is no extension beyond that date, even if your return is on extension.
Let's say I filed my returns back in April or even May, and now I do have the cash to make an IRA contribution. Do I need to amend what I've already filed?
Yes, if you want to take a deduction for it, you want to get more money back. Yeah.
Okay, how hard is that, the amending?
Well, that's a simple item. I mean, it's simple if you know what you're doing, like everything else, but it's relatively simple. However, if you're making a Roth contribution, which you know I like better because you don't get a tax deduction, but you never have to pay the tax in retirement, then you don't have to amend your return because Roth IRAs don't go on the return. But if you're in a situation where you may be qualifying for this retirement savers credit, then you would want to put it on because you could actually get a credit for contributing to a retirement account. But in no way can you contribute for 2019 after July 15th. And if you are making the contribution, I've already seen problems with this, make sure with your financial institution that it's earmarked for 2019. I've already seen problems with computers that believe it's for 2020 because normally after April 15th it would have been. So make sure once you made your contribution, go back and check that they've deposited for the right year.
So let me ask you another question about this. You mentioned the payment, that $1,200, $500 per kid. And this keyed off of your 2019 return. So can you just explain how that economic impact payment is calculated and what happens if you actually made too much money? Like a lot of people got a check based on 2018.
I just saw something, I think yesterday, how they're going about recouping money back. I don't know how that's going to work. I'm sure the computers will catch up to you at some point, so I wouldn't spend that money yet. Another point on July 15th, by the way, while I'm thinking of it, they changed not only the due date for the tax return, but for people that pay estimated taxes. If you recall, they moved the April 15th. If you pay estimated taxes, those of you who do or are listening, you know you pay 4 quarterly payments. The first one is April 15th. The next one is June 15th. They were both moved to July 15th. So speaking of having money, that's what reminded me when you were talking about that. You're going to need the money for your first 2 estimates by July 15th. So you better start getting that ready. They're both due. Both installments 1 and 2 are due July 15th.
Okay, here's a question, self-serving, because I'm in that category. Should I send 2 separate checks? Because I don't actually,
No.
I can just do one check with it says Q1, Q2.
Yeah, I did that too. But on certain states, like in the state of New York, you have to do the two separate ones because they ask you for which quarter. But for the federal, you just post a payment.
So we pay our taxes and explain to people about if you are going to go on extension and you do file your form. People will say to me, like, well, if I'm going to actually have to pay the tax that's due anyway, why should I just not file right now?
Oh, no, no, no. That is an excellent point. And I answer that question every year, as you know. The extension is only an extension of time to file, not to pay. If it was an extension of time to pay, everybody would say, you know what, talk to me in October. That's when I'll feel like paying. Except right now, you have this extra time period because of the COVID virus, obviously, till July 15th, where no interest is accruing. But if you don't pay by July 15th what you owe, then the hammer comes down on you, even if you're on extension. The extension is only an extension of time to file, not to pay. In fact, the penalty for not filing is 10 times worse than the penalty for not paying. So you want to make sure you file.
We'll get back to our interview with Ed Slott in just a minute. If you would like, why don't you hop onto the website, JillOnMoney.com. You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. It is free. Every single week you'll get it. Okay, we'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And yeah, it's Independence Day. Can't believe it. You should be barbecuing. Maybe you're on your way to a barbecue. Maybe you're going to a socially distant barbecue. I don't know. Regardless, we are happy to be with you, and we're so happy that you are tuning in. Maybe you're watching us. Maybe you're listening to us on our YouTube channel. Mark, we do have those YouTube people. That's where they access the show. So you can check that out. Our handle on YouTube is @JillOnMoney. Well, we are focusing on your taxes because some of you waited a little bit too long. Yes, indeed. Tax filing deadline is now July 15th. And, it's hard to keep track of all the different changes that have occurred, not only the extension of the deadline, but do you need to take a required minimum distribution? Is the QCD available? What's going on? We've got the expert for you, Ed Slott. He is a retirement and IRA expert. He's here to hold our hands through tax filing 2020. So a few other issues around taxes that I want to ask you about. I remember that we had some medical and dental expense change last year, and I've already forgotten about this, but what's the amount? Is it exceeding 7.5%?
7.5. It was supposed to go to 10, then it went back to 7.5. But the bottom line is, unless you have heavy medical expenses, you're not going to get the deduction because of the higher standard deduction. And the people that tend to have the highest medical expenses are older people, and they even get an extra standard deduction. So most people are taking the standard deduction. They don't even itemize anymore unless you have a real heavy medical expenses. And I've seen those returns. You have some people with medical home improvements. They have wheelchair access, the widening doors and hallways and railings and all that stuff. That adds up. And aides and nurses and things like that. So, yeah, you could have 50, 60, even 100,000 a year. Then you would itemize, and it would have to exceed 7.5% of your income. But if you have like regular medical, you're probably doing better with the standard deduction.
Okay. And are we still seeing, just out of curiosity, because I presume this will start up again, these phishing scams? Do you think this is going to start up again?
Oh, yeah. You know where I saw all the fraud? In the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP. You know, I hate saying that because it just sounds like PPP. But you know what I mean. The program
Yes.
to help out small business.
Yep.
Anybody who filed for that, you file legitimately with your bank. Forget about all these emails saying, remember what happened? The banks couldn't keep up with it and people weren't getting their money. Then, of course, all the hackers got in. I don't know how they got names of people who applied, but people started getting emails from people saying, oh, we're a private company. We can get your application into the bank. Just fill it out online. Give us your social security number, name, and your bank account so we can go in and deposit the money for you.
I tell you, they always think of something. All right, Ed, we are going to make sure that everybody who has not filed, and there's still millions of people who haven't filed, your due date is July 15th. Ed, there's still those free options available. The free file program is anyone who earns less than $69,000. So you get free filing.
Right.
So that program, which is good. Everyone obviously has learned the lesson of electronic filing because obviously anyone who was filed paper returns, by the way, it's taking forever to process.
Right,
those.
right.
And so this is your big push right now. If you have not done an electronic return, now's your time.
Yeah, there's another point too, Jill. I just thought of. Remember I talking about the estimates for July 15th? Unfortunately, so many people are getting unemployment insurance plus that extra $600, you know. That's taxable. If you don't have tax withheld, you may be subject to estimated tax payments on them. A lot of people are just taking the payments and thinking it's a freebie. That's taxable income.
And by the way, the IRS has a withholding estimator that you can use at irs.gov. You might want to check that out. The extension to July 15th also applies to not only the tax return filing date, but also for IRA and Roth IRA contributions for 2019. Does it also apply to all those medical savings accounts and HSAs?
Yes.
Okay. Now, tell us a little bit about the required minimum distributions for 2020. What is the deal now?
All right. Under the CARES Act, this is the relief for the COVID-19. They were all waived for 2020. Anything due in 2020 was waived. Now, people are a little confused about this. Like one of the questions we get even from advisors, what about beneficiaries who take RMDs? Those are waived. What about people who turned 70 and a half last year in 2019 and had till April 1st this year to take their first RMD? Didn't take anything in 2019. So their first one, even though it was for 2019, is also waived. And so is their second one, which is due in 2020. That's waived. If somebody died in 2020, the year of death distribution, and by the way, under the tax code, death gets you out of pretty much anything except RMDs. Even after you're dead, you still have to take them. A beneficiary actually takes them, and those are waived too if there was a death in 2020 and the RMD wasn't taken. So those are also waived. And inherited IRAs and inherited Roth IRAs, RMDs are waived.
And it's not like you have to take two next year.
It has
the year, right? Like, so 2020 never happened, according to the IRS.
You disregard it. That's a common question. Do I have to double up next year? Absolutely not.
What happens if you already took your RMD?
That's the big question. And I believe IRS will provide relief maybe any day now, because I think they're coming up against the July 15th estimated tax deadline. For example, the problem with the CARES Act, it was enacted at the end of March, 3 months into the year, and made retroactive back to the beginning of the year. So some people took their RMD, say in January, never realizing they'd be waived. Now the question is, can I put them back? And then you run up against all these rules. Right now, I don't even want to say right now, because when people hear this broadcast, the rules may change by then. So you're going to have to see if the rules apply to you. My prediction is that IRS will let people return those unwanted RMDs unless you're a beneficiary. Beneficiary RMDs cannot be returned. IRS doesn't have the authority to fix that. That would have to take a law change. And if you violated the once, I hate to get into this, but the once per year IRA rollover rule, if you took an IRA rollover, IRA to IRA in the last 12 months, you can't put it back, so you can't return it. But other than those situations, I think it will come soon, and IRS will let people put those unwanted RMDs back. And why do you want to do that? To eliminate the tax bill. And that's why you're coming up against this July 15th deadline, because if you can't eliminate the tax bill, you better pay in the estimated taxes to account for it. So I think at some point before July 15th, maybe well before, that's why it could be any day soon, IRS will provide relief. Do I have inside information? No. But I have history. And 10 years ago, or more than 10 years, when they had the 2008 debacle, financial crash, they waived RMDs, if you remember, for 2009. And the same thing happened. And IRS came out later in the year with relief saying anybody can return them. So I have a feeling they'll do the same thing here.
Ed, a lot of people who were maybe using that required minimum distribution, that was almost like a prompt that they would use the qualified charitable distribution, meaning that they could take their money out of their retirement account and push it over to a charity directly. Has anything changed around the QCD for this tax year 2020?
No, but it's a good question because the RMD age was raised to 72, but the QCD age remains at 70 and a half. So the question is, people say, can I still do them even if there are no RMDs to offset? Of course you could still do them, and you should. It's a great way to give to charity, the best way, because it's excluded from income, whether or not you're taking RMDs.
We'll get back to our interview with Ed Slott in just a minute. Hey, here's an idea. During the break, why don't you subscribe to our podcast? It's called Jill on Money. You can get it on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, radio.com, Google Play, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And the big mystery to me is, how can you possibly keep track of all the rules that have changed in just the last 7 months when it comes to retirement accounts? I'm going to forgive you. It's hard. You can barely remember the Secure Act, which seemed like the most important thing that Congress could do about retirement. And then the virus hit. Well, to help you out here today, we have one of our favorite guests. His name is Ed Slott. And Ed is a retirement and IRA expert. He is so easy to be around. He's so much fun. He has a great passion for what he does, and I think you'll find him infectious as well. We love him. If you have a question, don't hesitate. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Here's more of our interview with Ed Slott. When we go back in time for a moment, remember that whole Secure Act that seemed like the biggest deal in the world at the end of last year? Just remind me, required minimum distribution now has increased to age 72. That's for whom?
All right, forget about the age. Look at your birth certificate or whatever, your birthday. Anybody born after June 30th, 1949. In other words, if you are 70 and a half already in 2019, you don't qualify. It's for people turning 70 and a half in 2020. So it would be anybody born after June 30th, 1949 can use age 72.
Okay. What about somebody who is not a spouse, who inherits an IRA? What are the new rules from the Secure Act?
All right. There's no such thing for those beneficiaries as what we used to call a stretch IRA, where they can go out 40 or 50 years, or a grandchild, because they're so young, could go out 70 years. The tax law, the Secure Act you're talking about, did away with all of that for anybody who inherits in 2020. If you inherited in 19, you're grandfathered under the old rules. Most beneficiaries will get a 10-year rule. In other words, after they inherit, the inherited account has to be empty emptied by the end of the 10th year after death. But unlike the old system where you had to take RMDs each year as a beneficiary, you don't have to take anything until the end of the 10th year. So you have the flexibility. Actually, it's not a bad system. In years you're in a high bracket, maybe don't take. In years you're in a low bracket, take more or spread it out over the 10 years. All you have to know as a beneficiary, at the end of the 10th year after death, that account better be zero. Otherwise, you're subject to a 50% penalty on the amount you didn't take. Now, there are some people exempt from the 10-year rule if you're what's the tax law named an eligible designated beneficiary, but that's not most people. Mainly that's the spouse. The spouse is exempt from anything. The spousal rules haven't changed. They're grandfathered. They're the same as they were before. But there are other categories of people who do get the stretch, like a minor beneficiary. But the reason I say that's not most people, what are the odds of somebody like dying at age 80 having a 12-year-old child, unless you're Tony Randall or something?
That was the only one I could think of.
Right. So it's not grandchildren. People think, oh, it's a minor beneficiary. No, not grandchildren, your children. So there's not many in that category. And then there are special exceptions if you're a disabled beneficiary or chronically ill, or if you're around the same age as the IRA owner within 10 years, you still get the stretch. So really only the spouse is going to benefit there. Most people will get the 10-year rule. No more stretch IRA. Congress wanted its money faster.
Let's talk a little bit about, before we go, the changes to some of the rules regarding retirement accounts as a result of COVID-19. You know, it's weird. I have mixed emotions about this, Ed, because on one hand,
Me
I think,
too.
of course, people need help, but the rules could really allow people to go into their retirement accounts and take a lot of money out.
Good. It's not good. I totally agree with you. I'm on the same page as you. It sounds great, but really, you're taking from your own retirement account. It should be a last resort. That's what people don't understand. Everybody's saying, oh, it's a free lunch. You get all. No, you're just able, if you qualify, if you're sick with the virus or you had what they call adverse financial consequences, lost your job, furloughed, laid off, lost a business, all of those things, and you need money. Yes, it's a good relief provision. You can get into your retirement account without a penalty, without the 10% penalty. You could spread the income. You still pay the tax, but you could spread the income over 3 years and you could repay it back. But remember, once you take, if you can't repay it back, what's going to be for retirement? If you're really in dire straits and need that money, maybe you have creditors coming after you and you can't pay your bills. That money in your 401k and IRA may be creditor protected. The minute you take it out, you won't get it. It'll be exposed and the creditors will grab it. If anything, if you need money and you hopefully have other sources, use money that's not creditor protected. The last thing you want to do is take money out and expose it.
That's a great point. So let's just go through the rule. There's no 10% early distribution penalty. So that's if you're under age 59 and a half, for up to $100,000 from your IRA, your 401k, your 403b. Now, does the tax have to be spread evenly for 3 years?
No, you may be in a very low bracket. Maybe you lost a lot of income. I reported all at very low rates this year.
And you can put the money back in. I presume there's going to be some crazy amount of forms.
Oh, yeah. In
fact,
right? They just issued new guidance on this a few days ago. You have 3 years to put the money back. But one of the good breaks that just came out, let's say in my example, you took 60, but you only have to report 20, 20, and 20. So you reported the first 20. And remember, we're in 2020. We're talking about your 2020 taxes. You would have to include 20,000 in income. But let's say hopefully things turn around and you can repay that 20. You don't have to repay it till the due date of your 2020 tax return, plus extensions. So you actually have until October 15, 2021 to repay that part you took in 2020, the part that would have been includable in income, without having to pay the tax on it.
Okay, just one more segment with Ed. I would keep him on the air for hours if I could. During the break, why don't you go into the website, JillOnMoney.com, check out things that we've written and listen to old shows, maybe watch some TV segments, check out the resource section. It's all at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. Okay, so COVID-19 has wrecked your finances. I get it. And for many of you, that means that you're going to turn to your big mega assets. Maybe it's your house, and maybe it's your retirement account. Well, because of COVID-19, there has been a ton of relief efforts announced for retirement accounts. And specifically, there are a lot of provisions around how you can tap retirement accounts. We talked about how you can pull money out before age 59 and a half and avoid the early distribution penalty of 10%. In this segment, we're talking to Ed Slott, retirement and IRA expert, about whether or not it's a good idea for you to borrow from your retirement account if you are under pressure financially. So here is the conclusion of our interview with Ed Slott. The last part of this, some of the retirement issues around the coronavirus, is you can actually take loans against your company plans, right? You can now take $100,000.
If you qualify, again, you have to qualify under the same conditions as the coronavirus-related distributions. In other words, you have to be diagnosed, spouse or dependent or quarantined, laid off, all of that stuff. You still have to qualify. And there are no loans from IRAs. So we're only talking about 401ks, company plans, and they have to allow loans. They don't have to. In other words, it only works if they permit the loans. They don't have to.
And let's talk about the repayment of this loan. So I take out, let's just say I've got $400,000 in my retirement account. My spouse is laid off. I want to take out $50,000. I take the money out. Now, when do I have to pay that money back?
All right. Normally, you pay it back over a set period, quarterly, over 5 years. But under the Special CARES Act, loan repayments that are due between March 27th and December 31st, 2020 can be suspended for 1 year if the plan allows this.
So how do you feel about someone who says, let's just say a couple, like one of us can take a loan versus taking the distribution? Is there one that's better in your mind if you really are in bad straits?
The distribution is better because if you can't repay a loan, you get stuck with the tax and a 10% penalty. If you can't repay the coronavirus-related distribution, you only pay the tax, and it could be spread over 3 years.
Well, thanks again to Ed Slott. He is fantastic, and just if you get a chance, check out some of his appearances on public television. You can always go to his website, IRAHelp.com. So before we finish up this segment, let's take some tax questions. This is from Paul, who said that he wanted to use TurboTax by Intuit to do the IRS free file that people earning $69,000 or less. He says, I answered all the information. My total income was $53,000, my AGI $51,000. I'm below $69,000. And then he gets this pop-up message that says, you don't qualify for free file. And he says, wants to know, does TurboTax have a lower level for qualifying than $69,000? What's going on? So here's what I did. I went straight back to the irs.gov free file website. And right there, it says, choose a free file online option based on your income. Income $69,000 and below, free file online products. And then you click on it and it says, hey, you can use any one of these free file programs. So I'm just going through here. There's the one from H&R Block. There's one from TurboTax. But, interesting. Here's the deal. I click through, and what do I find about TurboTax? Check it out. It says TurboTax. You receive a free federal return. If your AGI is $36,000 or less, it's only free for active military. Well, that seems ridiculous. I would go to H&R Block because there you can get a free federal return if your adjusted gross income is 69,000 or less and your age is between 17 and 51 and then there's a whole bunch of stuff. So now I'm starting to look through this and I'm like, wait a second. These are crazy. Every single one of these programs makes it so difficult. I think the broadest one looks like the free 1040 tax return, which free taxes dot free whatever, but you got to go to the IRS website and check this out. It is mind blowing, Mark. You've got to check this out. There's all these different programs. There's one that says your adjusted gross income is $69,000 or less, and you've got to live in one of these states. One of them is easytaxreturn.com. Your AGI is 69,000 or less and any age, and you got to live in one of these states. You got to figure out which one of these boxes you fall into and make sure you choose the right one. But I got to tell you something. That's super shady. That is so crazy to me that that's what they do. I object, Mark. I object to that whole system. That seems patently unfair. But okay, you got to go through it. Again, irs.gov. It's free file. And you must go through and look at all of the offers to make sure you choose the one that is actually free for you. Oh my God. That grinds my onions like nobody's business. Okay, it's Jill on Money. When we return, we're going to do one more segment, and then I promise to let you go to enjoy your Independence Day weekend. All right, we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. And before we conclude the program, just want to remind you that we have been broadcasting this hour from the Policy Genius Virtual Studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. All you have to do is go to policygenius.com. I am still up in arms about that previous question about free file. It's making me insane. So annoying to me. Ugh, kills me. Okay. But now let me get to your final questions. Ellen writes, I mailed my tax payment at the end of March. Usually I ask the post office to require a signature, but I didn't do it this year because of the pandemic. Lines at the post office. I've been checking my bank records. The check hasn't cleared, and the July 15th deadline is coming up. The IRS was not accepting calls on its 800 number. Last time I called, what would you suggest I do? I'm really in a tizzy because what if I have to pay a penalty and the IRS doesn't acknowledge my payment? I tell you what, I wouldn't be in a tizzy. They know they're screwed because they have all these returns that piled up. They didn't have enough people there to do the work. You did have a tax return that was sent and it was postmarked. So you're going to be fine. But when we get to the conclusion of this crazy period, and maybe it'll happen next April, there are going to be all sorts of problems that need to be adjudicated. And I'm sorry, it's just one of those things where we are just all sort of beholden to our old habits. Mark told me this year, like, I had to stop writing checks and do the electronic thing. And I finally got myself motivated to do that. But what a pain in the neck. Okay, finally, can a single senior making less than $39,000 avoid taxes from capital gains held for more than a year? Well, the long-term capital gains rate for a single person is $0 to $40,000 is 0%. So yeah, you can do that. So just be careful and don't go crazy if you go over and have to pay the 15%. Okay, that's it. That's the show. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to send us emails whenever you have a question that arises. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Always go to the website, jillonmoney.com. You can contact us from right there, contact button, upper right-hand corner. Remember, gang, keep washing those hands, wear those masks, maintain that physical distancing, and do something nice for someone in your life. Happy Independence Day. Talk to you next week.